Hello everyone, welcome to our EDF webinar on training and development at EDF within our early careers schemes. I'm Lindsay, I'm a recruitment business partner at EDF, and at the beginning I'm just going to talk you through a little bit about our assessment process and some of the programs that we recruit graduates into, just to give you a little bit more information around those. And then I'm going to pass over to some of our graduates to talk to you about the training and development that we offer within EDF. So I'll just start off. So our assessment process, there's a few stages to this. So you'll make an initial application, which is submitting your CV and completing a short application form. We then screen those CVs, and people that meet the minimum criteria for the program are then sent online testing to complete. So this is a strengths-based assessment as well as some cognitive elements as well. If you're successful at that stage, you're then asked to complete a video interview. This is a one-way video interview, so you are asked to answer pre-recorded strengths-based questions. And then anyone that's shortlisted after that will be invited to a virtual assessment centre. So that's the assessment process as it is, and then we look to make offers following the assessment centre, and then you will go through an onboarding process with us as the recruitment team before you're passed on to the early careers managers to actually organise your onboarding and induction. So that's the process as a whole. We do have a question section open in the webinar. So if anyone has any questions about any of the things that I will talk about, or has any questions specifically for the graduates on the call, then please do put them in there and we will answer them as quickly as we can. And we will open up for Q&A at the end as well. So the locations that we generally recruit into within our graduate programs are into our generating stations. So that is Hinkley Point B and C in Somerset, Sizewell B and C in Suffolk, Dungeness in Kent, Hunterston in North Ayrshire, Heysham 1 and 2 in Morecambe, Torness, which is in Dunbar, and Hartlepool, which is near Durham. And then we also recruit into some of our corporate offices. So Doxford, which is near Sunderland, Hove, London, Edinburgh, Exeter, Gloucester, and Bristol. We do have schemes that are live and being advertised, so open for applications at the moment, and those are all displayed on the screen. So they are a trading scheme, a legal scheme, nuclear security, commercial, design engineering, science and engineering, and supply chain. So those are open at the moment and are closing at the end of September. So you have a couple more weeks in which to apply for those. And then we have schemes that will open in January 2024. So those are data and technology, finance, commercial within our renewables side of the business, procurement, and engineering within our renewables side of the business. So those will open in January 2024. And that is all I wanted to run through. Like I said, if anyone has any questions about any aspect of the recruitment process or any stages that you might go through and the process that we follow, then please do put them in the questions section here and we'll answer them as quickly as possible. And we'll open for Q&A at the end. But I will pass over to Sandy now.
Yes, thank you. Thanks. Hi, my name's... Can you hear me okay? Is that all right, first of all? Okay, I've got a thumbs up, which is fantastic. So yeah, hi, my name's Sandy. I'm a senior analyst currently in EDF in their customers division. And inside the customers division, a team called Wholesale Market Services. So the team basically trades, buys and sells energy on behalf of generators and also customers, as EDF is a vertically integrated company. I was on the commercial scheme between 2020 and 2022. Best scheme, in my unbiased opinion, but we'll go into a bit of detail. I'll just go through how I found the scheme, how I got there, how I enjoy the scheme, and any tips, for yourselves, going forward. So if we could have the next slide, please, Lindsay, that'd be great. So this is my kind of journey. I try to put it in as many icons and visuals as possible. But before EDF, I studied chemical and energy engineering at the University of Leeds and absolutely loved my time there. Feel like I'd enjoyed the numeric part of that, and a lot of the logic and the sort of asking the questions how and why. So really enjoyed that. And whilst I was also at university, did a placement year at Unilever, so working in one of their factories making deodorants basically, which is great fun in Leeds. And then also spent a summer internship at Rolls-Royce PLC, so making aerospace engines. And when I was graduating, I actually didn't have a graduate scheme that I was able to go to. Spent a whole year being rejected basically, and so one of those graduate schemes where I was rejected was Ofgem, who got in touch to say basically, we've got a few jobs direct entry that we have available. Would you be interested? And me, not really, beggars can't be choosers, said yes, and had a great time. I spent a year there working in as an analyst, and then whilst I was there, still had that itch to sort of really sort of experience and see a company in all its facets. And so that sort of took me to applying for EDF's graduate scheme, and was there for 2 years. So spent 4 6 month rotations there, 2 in EDF itself, 1 in EDF renewables, and then 1 at Hinkley Point C. So those locations you mentioned, I kind of did the scheme 2020 2022, which was quite affected by COVID, but that would have been based in Brighton, London, Somerset, and potentially Edinburgh as well. So there's a real breadth and strength that the EDF grad scheme can provide, is that you're able to see a lot in the space of 2 years. And still got a bit of FOMO, obviously, but still really enjoy my job now as a senior analyst in the wholesale markets team. And that's where I'm focusing on flexibility, energy flexibility. So right now, the focus of that is batteries and how to make grid scale batteries work in terms of a financial standpoint, but also just can you connect it to a solar farm? So if you don't need it, you can charge up a battery, and also all the data and the processes that go behind that. So I think the takeaway there, it's quite a potted journey. Nothing ever goes the way you want it to, but over time, it's just making the best out of every situation. And I'm very glad to have come to EDF and found a home. Could you have the next slide, please, Lindsay? So this is line shouldn't be as squiggly as that, but that's completely fine. So these were the 4 rotations I did. Yeah. So we had rotation 1, where I was a product manager for 6 months in customer operations, and so that's where you can basically look after a website, which was totally out of my comfort zone, coming from kind of engineering and policy background. But damn form and impression. It was really cool to sort of get used to just a way of working at EDF, and just learn about stakeholder management, about prioritizing sometimes quite conflicting targets people have, and really ensuring that I get to know people all the way around the business. And also I'll mention as well that throughout the training is both practical and also theoretical. So the early bits were doing an induction, learning about Google Analytics, what the metrics are for a successful website, and just basically like why people would want to read things and how they read. So the second rotation in EDF was an analyst in their pricing development team. So that's looking at a lot more technical detail about how we're able to price contracts for large businesses. So that took a little bit of Python and making front ends in TypeScript. But there's also an element of automation there. You want to make your analysis as useful as possible, not just for once, but for the many times that you might be doing it. So that was great. And in theory, was learning about energy markets and coding, sort of more classical learning there. Then later on in the scheme, moved to Hinkley Point C for my 3rd rotation. That's as a commercial assistant in Hinkley Point C. Really great. Really enjoyed that. So that was negotiating with our third parties about how best to commission Hinkley Point C. Massive job. So, we'll need trusted third parties to do that, and we'll need contracts in place for them to provide that work. So there's a lot of modeling about what that would look like in terms of money, what the contracts look like, and how they can be best utilized in terms of how to incentivize a partner. And overall, getting a group of people to agree on a way forward, which sometimes difficult, but very rewarding when it happens. And again, theoretically, you know, trying to get deeper in some things that I enjoyed, so supply chains, decarbonized economies. And then the final rotation for me was building batteries. Basically, is how do you build a battery not just once but multiple times? You know, EDF Renewables have a massive pipeline of projects they want to get through. So the work I was doing there was, you know, if it's all well and good if you want to build one battery, but how about 20 across the country? So that's where the commercial and technical bits met for me, and that's where, you know, over time it kind of on the grad scheme all comes together. And yeah, final rotation was really great fun. That's general history, and then so after the graduate scheme, you know, the development that I mentioned on the other side, it never stops. And I think every day is a school day, not just, you know, on rotation, but after. I think the grad scheme is great for setting you up in a way that makes you comfortable with change, but also about how you want to develop and how to get there. And I like to think of it as a bit of a T-shaped skill. So the grad scheme has been great as a broad tour of EDF and energy as a whole by extension. And this permanent role is now me choosing a place where I really want to go and deliver and develop. So I see it as a T-shaped skill. And so you have the good amount of breadth on the scheme and also the depth in the permanent role after. So for me, that looked, you know, like data analysis and visualization. So when I picked up a bit of Python on a rotation, I thought, cool, that's pretty cool. I want to do more of that. So I have. And also connected things like SQL and we've got structured databases and how to do that. And also visualizing it. So I've mentioned Tableau here. Also enjoyed that interface between, you know, sort of technical and the commercial. So the role I'm doing at the moment is looking at contracts and obviously people aren't going to move unless there is a contract or an agreement in place. And so that's been a fantastic underpinning of, okay, we've got that in place, but how is that going to be administered? How are you going to make the most out of that agreement or contract? But the final bit, you know, actually it's quite topical because in EDF we have a great learning and development scheme. So I've used a bit of a fund that was available to me to sign up for a power engineering course. So actually I'm going back to school and doing a City and Guilds like apprenticeship level power engineering course to really bolster my knowledge about batteries and the grid there. Next slide, if that's all right. So I think I was asked to sort of provide a few reflections and advice, and I think whatever like path anyone chooses, you are going to change and you are going to develop, whether you like it or not. And that's not meant to be a sort of a you know, combative way of thinking. It's just essentially that over time you'll know what you'll enjoy more than other things. You'll get your skills, you'll develop. But it's going to happen. So you may as well take control of it. So I'd say to really think deeply about what fundamentally you like to do and don't like to do. I wouldn't even think about overlaying, you know, company names or even sort of, you know, particular languages or anything like that. But I just think, do you like problem solving? Do you like talking to people? Do you like, you know, the opposite of those things? But what would make you happy fundamentally? So I take time to really think about that. I then think, okay, you know, and then take the time to think, well, if your skills right now aren't where you'd be happy, how can you develop towards that? And so definitely do take time to sort of think what's available to you and prioritize those development opportunities and go right after them. The way and it's all well and good doing that bit, but holding yourself accountable I found is always very important. So let your parents or your friends know that, oh yeah, you know, I'm thinking about doing this course or I'm doing this course. I've made a study group. I like the TV show Community, but it's also a good idea to have, you know, a group of you either learning something the same together or something different, but letting each other know. And I think the final one, I think is probably the most important for me, is that you can have many lifetimes of doing many different roles, but you only have one. And so growing a network means that you can learn more about what is available to you and might illuminate potential sectors or job roles that you had, you know, may never have had thought about. So I think growing your network is critical, and to do that, I'd say being curious and kind is a great way of getting there. So I think that was the end of my slides, I think, Lindsay. But yeah, if any questions on that, no, it's been a pleasure to really sort of talk about my journey and pay forward, hopefully, the good experiences I've had at EDF. So thanks very much for listening, and looking forward to responding to some questions in the polls.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. And I'll pass over to Imi.
Hello. Gosh, how do I follow on from that, Sandy? Thank you. That was really interesting. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Imi. I did the Science and Engineering graduate scheme the same year as Sandy. I'm now a commissioning engineer at Hinkley Point C. So first, I'll talk a bit about how my grad scheme worked. So what the format of it was. So it was quite similar to Sandy's. It was 16 months long, and it was split into various different placements. So it was 6 placements, each a bit shorter than Sandy. So each of them were kind of 2 to 3 months long. And the format was the same for everyone on my scheme. So everyone in the Science and Engineering grad scheme had the same 6 placements that they needed to cover. So 3 of them were in nuclear new build, which are the kind of the new project, which is Hinkley Point C and Sizewell C, and then 3 were in generation, so the other power stations that Lindsay mentioned at the start, spread out across the country. So my first placement was in commissioning, which is actually the team that I'm in now. So this was one of my NNB placements. So the purpose of commissioning is essentially to test all of the equipment that we're going to have at Hinkley Point C and check it works and check that it's going to perform the function that we have claimed that it will perform. So that was the first one, and that was based in Bristol. My second one was in pre-ops, so this was also in NNB. So pre-ops stands for pre-operations, so it's essentially all of the roles that will turn into operations when we are a generating station, but pre-generating, hence pre-ops. So when I was in this team, I was in asset management. So asset management are responsible for loads of different things, from maintenance to spares, and then also it includes the reactor operators. So quite a range of things. I was in the maintenance team when I was in asset management. We then have Advance. So Advance is one of our responsible designers. So they are responsible for the design of Hinkley Point C. So they're based in Bristol. That was a really good placement. And then my next one was in operations. So similar to Sandy, it wasn't completely straightforward, my placements, because of COVID. So I did have to do a little bit of wiggling myself and like really push for people to give me a placement, essentially. But I managed to get an operations placement at Sizewell B. So when I was there, I was in the fuel route team. So I was based there for 2 months, and it happened to be when they were on an outage. So an outage is basically when a reactor comes offline to refuel. So that was a really good opportunity because it meant I got to see inside the reactor building when they were offline, and watch fuel movements and stuff like that. So that was really good. And then my next one was in engineering. So the engineering placements are always at generating stations. So I decided to go into reactor systems on this placement just because I thought it would be interesting, essentially. So that is one thing I would say. I don't know how other people found it, but I think with my grad scheme, it was quite flexible. If there was an area that I felt like would really be beneficial for my learning, then the people in charge of my scheme were quite good at accommodating it. So that again was at Sizewell. And then my final placement, technical and safety, a bit unusual to stay in one place, but again, it was at Sizewell. I just really like Sizewell, so I just asked if I could stay. So technical and safety is split up again into loads of different teams. So it's like industrial safety, and then also chemistry and nuclear safety group. So I spent a couple of months with them, rotating between each of the 3 main sections of technical and safety. So that's the kind of overview of which departments I worked in on the scheme. In terms of training and development, the grad scheme was really good for putting you on various different courses throughout the scheme. So firstly, this was nice because it meant that it was a way for all of us on the grad scheme to meet up. Unfortunately, lots of ours were held online because of COVID. but there were a couple that we got to do in person. And also it was just nice getting to talk to everyone, even if it was virtually. So I've just listed the ones that I did on my grad scheme. So the first one was AGR plant technology. So Hinkley Point C and Sizewell C are PWRs, which is pressurized water reactor. But most of the other power stations that EDF own in the UK are AGR, which is advanced gas cooled reactor. So we spent a week learning about the technology of that, which was really interesting. We then did a principles of nuclear generation training. So this was kind of a really high level overview of nuclear generation and why it's important, and kind of the pros and cons of it in the UK. It didn't really go into too much detail, but it was definitely a needed base level knowledge that none of us had when joining the grad scheme. We then did British Energy Fundamentals training, which was kind of more of a overview of the business side of EDF. So it went into detail about the commercial side and kind of like the law side of it and stuff like that, which I had no idea about, and I haven't really learned anything since being in engineering, but it was really good to get that knowledge. We then did nuclear fundamentals. So this was quite an intense course. This was 3 weeks long, and it was split up. So each week covered a different topic. The first week was reactor theory and chemistry. So that was quite an intense week, lots of reactor physics, and there were lots of different lecturers that came in to help with this. So it was really well run. And then the second week was more about the engineering side. So it was split up between mechanical engineering and chemical engineering. And then the final week was to do with electrical engineering and I&C, which is instrumentation and control. And then finally, we did the EPR short course. So as I said, Hinkley Point C is a pressurized water reactor, but the actual name of it is EPR, which comes from European pressurized reactor. So that it's basically just the design of Hinkley. So that was just a week-long course that we did, going into the systems of how Hinkley Point C works. So on top of training in terms of development, on the grad scheme, you also get a chartership mentor. So I also put assignment review forms there. So at the end of each assignment, so each of my 6 placements, I had to fill out an assignment review form. So this was basically a really good way of keeping track what you've done on your assignments. So there were a few objectives that we needed to complete for each placement that had already been set to us. So they were kind of standard for each person for each of those 6 areas that I've mentioned. But then there was also opportunity for you to create your own objectives, which you would do with your assignment manager. So that was the person who was responsible for you in your team whilst you were in that placement. So at the end of each placement, you would go through this assignment review form with your assignment manager, but then also with your chartership mentor. And their responsibility is basically just to assist you with your chartership development. So basically identifying anything that you've done in your assignment that they think would be relevant to your chartership if you're aiming towards chartership. And yeah, it's basically up to you how much effort you put into that. But it was good to have someone there to ask questions if needs be. So that was my time on the grad scheme. So I've now been in commissioning for nearly 2 years. So I'm in the conventional island commissioning team. So basically how I got there was at the end of the grad scheme. We were all sent out a big list of roles that were available to us at the time, and we could then pick our top 3 of permanent roles that we would like, and we were given an interview for them, and then you were basically assigned the role based on these interviews. So I picked conventional island commissioning team, which is where my first assignment was. And I am now responsible for the heat sink systems. So these are basically the seawater systems that are going to be used for cooling. So whilst in this time in commissioning, I have carried on doing various training and development courses. It definitely did not stop at the end of the grad scheme. So following on from the EPR short course, I've now done the EPR systems course. So this was a 2 weeks course, and it basically just goes into way more detail about each of the systems. I feel like this is a really good course, but what made it better is the fact that I did it after the grad scheme, because first of all, I had more background knowledge, but also because I've now got my permanent role, I could relate it to that. So it was really good to see how my systems in heatsink relate to other systems. So like what systems I need for my systems to work, and which other systems my systems help function. So that was good. Another really great thing about my team in commissioning is that we get the chance to do outage secondments. So next week, I'm actually going to do my third one at Heysham. So the idea of this is when other generating stations come offline, there's a really big work package in a very small amount of time. So the outage is kind of around 2.5 months, and you're basically getting the chance to work on plant that hasn't been worked on for 18 months. So they kind of need any support they can get. So we have an agreement in commissioning where we will send commissioning engineers to support to get experience, which helps both of us out. So whilst on the 2 outage secondments I've done so far, I've got the chance to do various trainings whilst there. So entry to confined spaces and working at height, and then also access to radiological controlled areas, things like that, which is a really good opportunity, and it's good to bring that knowledge back to Hinckley as well. Also, whilst being in commissioning, I've done a nuclear safety culture training course, which kind of so far it's split into 2, and I've done the first session so far, and it just gives kind of some background as to why we need nuclear safety culture, and what steps we're taking to ensure that everyone has that culture ingrained in them before we even get fuel on site. And then on top of that, I've done behavioural safety training, which is it's not to do with nuclear safety culture as such. It's more to do with kind of standard and industrial safety type thing, which is very relevant for the state that Hinkley Point C is in at the moment. And then finally, I've had the chance to do a flow loop simulator training. So the flow loop simulator is essentially a very small rig in the Bridgewater College in Cannington. So it's basically kind of gives you an overview of what the plant will look like. So it's got an example of each equipment that we might have, like it has a few valves and a couple of pumps, various tanks and strainers and things. So the idea of this training is basically to teach us how to commission in a safe environment. So yeah, that training was really useful. So yeah, that is the end of my presentation. I just wanted to say one thing, kind of following on from what Sandy said about any advice that we would give. Similar to what Sandy said, my advice would just be say yes to anything, really. There have been so many things that my manager has asked me to do on the grad scheme and since being in commissioning that I thought, oh, that sounds really hard. I have no idea how I'm going to do that. But I just thought, oh, I might as well say yes. And then eventually you figure it out. And there's always people around that are willing to help. And then once you've done it, you've learned so much and you feel really good about yourself. So just say yes would be my advice. And thank you for listening.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Lenormand, and I am a software engineer working in North Star. I develop a web and mobile application for our customer. I joined EDF in 2020 through the Data and Tech graduate scheme, and I'm going to talk through my training and development. So basically, the Data and Tech scheme lasts 2 years and at 4 different placements of 6 months. So my first placement was in sales and marketing in a talent matching team. I was doing data engineering for debt recovery. It's kind of a bit complex, but yes, so data engineering was, is kind of preparing the data for the data science part of a business. And the debt recovery is about people who who could be financially vulnerable, or people who are going to have issue, and it was trying to help to discover who is these people and how to avoid this. Sandy, can you mute yourself? I think I can hear some. Sorry.
Oh, sorry about that.
Great, thank you. So yeah, that was my first placement. Then I moved into BCNIT, software engineering, and I was doing some front-end development using React and Redux for Azure dashboard. So this is more for not the customer, but for the people who will answer to our customer on the call to have access to all their data. And then we moved to the data side of it. Basically, the placement are one data, one software, one data, one software. And this time I did the other side. I wasn't preparing the data, but I was doing the data science part of it. However, it was a different project. It was on customer lifetime value and churn. What I mean by that, it was trying to figure out roughly how much a customer kind of bring money, kind of like to try to find the right price. We need to figure out kind of what is the whole cost to the operation. Is not only the cost of the electricity, there's so many costs. There's cost of answering to the call and all cost of all of this, to try to figure out what is the value of a customer, and also trying to figure out who is going to leave, to try to do potentially offers and retention and all of this. So it's using some kind of doing some analytic or intelligence to try to figure out all of this. And I was using tech like Python, SQL, AWS. And then, so after this, normally I would have gone to a more back-end part of doing AWS placement, but I wanted to specialize on front-end. And before the scheme, I've been a mobile developer, and I really love design, and I knew this is where I wanted to go. So I kind of did a specific request. I did a UX placement, which is not what any of my other not classmates, I was like people on my court on asked, can I do a specific placement which tailored to me, where I really want to learn about design. So I talked about other people in the business, and they accepted me to do a placement there. So that was a placement was specific to me. It was a special request, and they accepted it. So I got to learn UX, CX, and UI design, all of this. I really wanted to see all part. And exceptionally, I split my placement in two, which is really uncommon, where I did 3 months in a team doing UI design, where I was designing our new app and mobile app for our customer using Figma and Sketch. And the next 3 months, I did some service design. It was a bit different. So once we build our app, I was doing the first testing, getting feedback, using user testing to get feedback from our first customer to understand if it was good or bad, and feeding that and modifying. So that really helped. Now I have moved into front-end development permanent role, and that really helped to have a way more awareness on what I'm building, and not only code for not only like just code what I've been asked. I can think, okay, I'm doing this, or try to put myself on the customer and have a bit more reflection. That's why I wanted to do it. And EDF have some flexibility. If your project makes sense, they will help you to make it happen. So now I'm going to go a bit more on what different type of learning I had through the scheme. So through the data and technology, we have classroom training. So we will have some who are being for everyone. So we have some non-technical to give us awareness of the business, different, like, for example, we're using Agile, so they learn how to Agile, how to do presentation, finance, all kind of thing. And there will be some technical one with tailored. So they, for example, I had one on AWS, I had one on Python, but they all depend, like we feed on the previous year feedback on how it had been in the next year. They adjust to have the best classroom training for the future graduate. So the other type of training we have self-training platform available. So there is LinkedIn Learning with paid for. We have Code Academy and Udemy, which are platform where you can have different course. So yeah, you can learn from that. Outside, we also been used out. If you love none of the platform, just ask, and if it justifies, EDF will pay for it. And even like in the data intake where there's so many resources online that you can use and group. So for me, for example, I've been teaching at CodeBar a few years ago. So that's an example. And then I'm going to talk about the learning on a job. So there's first, we're learning by doing, like doing your day-to-day job, you learn so much from it. There's learning from your colleague. Here we have a culture with really openness and acceptance. If you don't know something, ask. Nobody will ever like think anything bad. Is really what the culture is. Ask. Someone in the room also probably doesn't know, and it's better that it's clear from the start. And it's really, we are pushed to like ask any question we have, and that's great as an environment to work. And then we can attend to learning events. So for example, I've been to AWS event, game days, I've been to AWS conferences. Also internally, we have a hackathon where we spend the day together, kind of like trying to solve some issue and working together. We also have some dedicated time. It really depends on the team. So in my team at the moment, I have a lunch and learn session. Every Thursday, we have a new topic for an hour and a half we presented, and we learn something new. I have been in another team where every 2 weeks we had a Friday where we was not meant to work on ticket, or it was just a time for us to learn something new or do a project. There is also through the graduate program, you have a buddy, a care manager, an assignment manager who are here to help and answer to any question and help you to like set goal, monitor your project, and like give you feedback and push you through it. So there's also some funding for professional certification. So I didn't do any during the scheme, but they're available either during the scheme. Some people did it during the scheme, and after I just passed my cloud practitioner for AWS, who've been paid for. I know a lot of people do it in the graduate scheme, but I didn't have time before. And there is, as I was saying, specific requests for placement. So like as I said, I did a specific request for my last placement to be really tailored to me. But when I was in data science team, for example, there wasn't on my particular project. I wasn't doing one part of machine learning I wanted to do and learn. So they let me set some time to like do a personal project where I could learn that specific skill. So it's always open to talk, and like you can always say, hey, I would like to do that or work on that, and we'll tailor it for you. So next thing I would say as an advice is like build your network. There's in EDF, there's so much opportunity to learn from others. There's like in tech world, we have 3 different guilds with data science, data engineering, and software engineering guild where you can join. There's also networks. There's a young professional network. We have like we're developing like the data and tech brand and all of this. So it's really great because to like meet other people who do the same thing than you, but who are not working with you. EDF is big, and it's a way to like, sometimes you will need to do something, and in your team, you want nobody have the skill, and you will just, this is a way to know other people and reach outside of your team. Hey, could you help with that? Or we teach different things, keeping aware of what's happening and teaching different skills from through the business. The other thing I would say is you monitor your progress. So it's really good to know where you're going or what you want to try to achieve, and EDF helps you through that with a yearly we set up objective, and there are 2 types of objective. The first is for the scheme, it's something will be through the year, what you want to achieve personally through that year. And the second is through the assignment. You're going to, for example, if you have data assignment, you will put specific to this, doing that placement, I want to achieve that related to the placement. And then yeah, so basically this is more at the event. So you grow during the scheme, but once you finish your scheme, you can still continue growing. So for voting out of the scheme, so the data intake scheme is normally should be the same, like we all have different roles and we say our preferences. But so far for the last 2 years, there wasn't any interview process because we all end up having the first or the second role we wanted. Most of them are matched to the first. We all have different preferences, and in the end, we end up being slotted and matched. We don't even have to do an interview, which is great. So yeah, so I moved after the scheme. I moved to work, as I said, on the front end, doing web and mobile. But the learning haven't stopped there. It's like in the end, I'm learning React development, and there's such a big work. As Kelly was saying, is like now I'm really specializing, and it's a lot to learn. And even on where we are, we still continue to be kind of pushed to learn more. We have like we have a competency framework where we're being told, like, when we came out of scheme, we're level 1, and then like this is all a different area where you can improve, and we set out a new goal and always improve, and we always can do learning. It never stops. So I had a few tips with you, John, to kind of end the code. So basically I was saying, I would say from the data intake scheme, not everyone comes from a computer science degree. So don't compare yourself to others, because it's not because you come from a different degree and you don't know how to code that you're less worthy. We all have different profile and strength, and bring a unique perspective and opinion and approach to the project. Really, I would say we are, as a data intake, we are mind solver, like we are problem solver, not mind solver, sorry. Yeah, that is the most important, is to be able to like think to a problem. So don't worry. Don't worry. Like don't compare to yourself, and try to do your best. And we all have different skill. The second thing I would say, really important to keep track of your work and evaluate your own performance, and try to identify where you need to work on to get where you want. I keep a list of what I done, so I can showcase or what I want to do. And I would say last, communicate effectively about your work and make it visible to others. I think it's sometimes work you can do can be, if you're not sharing it, or not necessarily seen. So for example, in Data Tech, we will write a blog article about it, or we'll go and talk on conferences, or we kind of share our work. And that was my tip. Thank you everyone for to listen to it. And I think now we're going to move into the Q&A. I don't know how we,
Well, yeah, we can see the Q&A, and I know, thank you, Holly. I know you're responding to all the questions that are more for the recruitment and people team. But I mean, we've got 12 minutes, so if there's any Q&A for us as a three, about any of this that you've heard, then please do ask away in the Q&A. We'll answer every one of them. Just checking to see if there are actually any that we could talk to. Oh, Holly, you've answered all these. There's nothing for us to answer.
I see one who haven't been answered. We're saying
Was that security clearance one?
A different. I have a different one, but whatever. I don't. Maybe I've been answering something else. I should pick one with. Is there a timeline for the assessment center date, or when the final offer are usually usually made? The assessment center for me was in November, I believe. I know there was another assessment center in January. Sometimes they run two group, and the offer for me been made few days after. I know some people had offers a bit later, like if for example they offer and some people decline the offers, and they reopen more and they can send a bit later on.
Yeah, that tees up with, I think Holly's meant put a response in the one above that saying, exactly the same. So, assessment centres happen late November, early December, and then offers made within a week of the assessment centres. So that tees it there.
I've seen another one. Does the all graduates team start in September? Already answered.
Yeah, I think on the second one about tips for someone interested in the legal graduate scheme. So there was somebody on the commercial graduate in my cohort that studied law at university, took a real interest in the legal team, and actually through the process had a bit of experience there on the scheme, and is now on a training contract there. And I don't know if if you want to message me separately, I can see if I can ask her for any tips on working in the legal space. So unfortunately I can't really be of any more use than that. But a question, the second one though, what's the one most interesting project? Do you know what? It's Imi's section. So the cool thing that I worked on that I still think is so cool is commissioning and the Hinkley Point C project as a whole. So massively critical, it's a cornerstone basically of EDF in the UK is the nuclear generation output. And just being part of Hinkley Point C project, I'm sure Imi, you know much more than me. It's so sort of laser-like focus about building Hinkley Point C on time, to budget, and everyone is laser focused on that. So I think that's the coolest project that I've been on is the Hinkley Point C project. But you'll know a lot more about it than I will. I just saw the commissioning program, or the ComOps program, I think it's called now.
Yeah, that's right. Commissioning is technically merging with pre-ops to be ComOps. To be honest, though, my answer to that question is probably not actually something that I've done as part of HPC. I would say the coolest project I've been part of was probably when I was in Fuel Route at Sizewell, because it's just like you're only going to see it once every 18 months, and even then you're only going to see it if you're part of that specific team. But yeah, seeing them move the fuel around, and I even got to drive the pond fuel handling machine, not when there was any fuel attached to it, don't worry, but just something like that is so cool. So I would, if anyone does the science and engineering grad scheme, I would recommend to definitely request a generating station placement, because I'm not sure how it works now, whether the split is still the same, whether you still have to go to some generating stations or not. If you don't have to, then I would recommend request it. And then if you can be very specific about the team, I would suggest going into Fuel Route because it's cool. And also seeing an outage, try to see an outage. Should I carry on with what stood out about EDF's grad scheme for you?
Do you know what, Vanessa, have you got a project in mind that we'll wrap this one up before we move on to the next one? But yeah, is there any for yourself, Vanessa, with that project-wise?
I mean, it's going to be the one I'm currently in. I just love working for me in web and mobile development. It's like, for me, what's really cool about it is like I can see directly how it impact. Like I can code and then I can see it directly, and it directly impacting our customer. We are redesigning at the moment completely the mobile and the web app, which is and changing the whole way it working with changing the backend, and it's going to improve so much to improve the experience to the customer in terms of customer service. They have access to the data much quicker. They can help them quicker. And in terms of the app, it's impacting we're doing some really cool feature we call Energy Hub, for example. We'll give a day tool consumption, like day tool idea where you're consuming electricity, for example, and it give compared to other people, it give more holistic approach, of more data like idea of where you consume, and you can impact your bill better if you know, like my first expense is about it's like, for me, for example, my freezer, my fridge freezer consumes half of my bill. I have a massive budget, but it's really useful if you want to reduce your bill to buy, for example, a more efficient fridge freezer or this kind of thing. Knowing where you spend your money is really help to reduce your energy. And this is really good to see the impact on giving information to people or making it easier and more accessible. And one of our work in developing mobile app is also thinking about accessibility to people. Like before EDF, I didn't realize that some website where could be hard to access to people with disability, and we work on challenge of how we can make energy need to be accessible to everyone, and how we can improve the way of using it to make it accessible to everyone. So that was really cool.
Sounds good.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. And Chrissy, we'll just come back to your second question in a sec, but Alicia's asked one about how you find the application process, and Vanessa, did you want to start with how you found the application process, and have you got any advice for the application process itself?
Well, Kitty and I remember we were the same year and we did the same application process. I found it it had also a bit of fun. It was a mix of an application process and fun. I don't know if it's the same now. Back to then, it was kind of like a boot camp where all of the hair doing different exercise and trying to solve challenge. And for me, I have a very good memory of it. But yeah, it is. Yeah, I think as long you don't panic, you like you're trying to solve issue, you're paying attention to other, you will behave. Maybe not the right word, but and you have some idea and think to show it goes well, like it, and it's a nice process and fun. But maybe people
I think
also.
don't panic, be yourself, be calm. And I mean, did you have any tips for the application process itself? It may very well be the same as ours, but yeah, did you have any reflections on when you were doing the process, and anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, not really. I think I just agree with what you two said. I guess during the assessment centre, it's good to contribute as much as you can. Because if you don't say anything, then they have nothing to assess you on. So that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Okay, fantastic. And then we've got another question as well. Was there any moments where you felt that a particular task was given to you, and it was something that you weren't able to do, and how did you deal with it? I think most of the experience on the grad scheme, I think moving around so frequently, I know for ourselves, Vanessa, myself, it was 6 months, and on the engineering scheme, it can be quicker, and there's a lot of opportunities to learn. And I think, you might get something that's like, oh, how on earth do I do this? But as I mentioned, you've got such a good support network around you as investment. You've got such a good support network around you that, it's a really good, think of it as like a safety net. You can go out and have a really good go. But if at some point, it's like, I've just got no idea, there's always going to be someone there and available to help. And that's actually one of the sort of, we'll go back to the sort of part two, like what differentiates, EDF scheme from others. I think it's that real breadth of knowledge and real deep knowledge that people have in the industry. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add more or to that particular task.
Yeah, as I said before, the culture in here is really to ask and say if you have any problem. Like for me, it's like every day I would come and be like, hey, I don't know how to do that. Is anyone at work on this bed and can help? And just people jump, and we pair program all the time. So it's really a culture where you just you take the task even if you don't know, and you just ask someone to help you and pair, and then you learn. It's really good to learn and really good opportunity. So don't be afraid of this. You would never be left on your own. Even like I mean, like the thing I'm currently working on is like, I didn't know how to do. I asked first person. The first person kind of gave up, and I asked another person, and we all helping each other. It's great, really great.
Okay, right. So going back to part two of what I think it was in the question to finish off was what stood out about EDF's grad scheme compared to other companies. So we can finish on that one actually, because we've got time, but we'll round this up in the next minute or so. But yeah, do you want to start, Amy, with what stood out to you? What stood out to you about EDF?
Yeah. So for me, it was probably just the fact that you get to rotate around various different locations. So yeah, the location was a selling point. Seeing different parts of the UK is cool, but then also moving around in all the different departments. There are so many different departments in EDF, and it's really good to see what each one does, and then also how each one interacts with other ones. So working in different departments on the grad scheme has helped me with my permanent role, because if I now need to ask a question to someone in another department, I have more of a clue of where to go than I would if I hadn't done that. So that was definitely it for me.
And Vanessa, any points differential for you?
Yeah, mine is a bit special. I didn't compare any of the tech graduate schemes. So it, I have a bit of a different thing. I went straight into a normal role before I did a data and tech graduate scheme. And I got really specialized. But as I want to move into a more lead role later on, I took the data and tech graduate scheme as a way to learn, to expand my knowledge in kind of vertical way and learn really. I find it's really important to, wherever you go, it's really important to kind of understand each part of how something is built or how something is work. So I found that a graduate scheme really was helping me to, learn a bit of how everything worked together, and it helped me every day to have all these. It really built a solid foundation. And for me, it was more, I wanted to work for EDF because someone who was passionate about energy and solving, trying to help the world to kind of, would say helping Britain to achieve net zero, and this was something I care about. So. And to be honest, in the Data and Tech graduate scheme, we actually nominated for the best. This year, we nominated for gaining the best Data and Tech graduate scheme. We might win it. I don't know. We are not 3 listed, but I think we're doing fairly well because.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think I'd echo those points. The best thing I found about the scheme is that no other company does a better vertically integrated scheme better. So it's I'm fine. I think, being biased, spent the whole 2 years, on the EDF graduate scheme, but talking to my friends, peers that have also been on graduate schemes, the sort of really good balance. There's a really good balance of quantity and quality. So on certain schemes, you can go from all the way from customers all the way up to generation nuclear new build. So the scope and the breadth of knowledge that you're going to pick up is second to none, really, in the energy sector in the UK. So cool. Okay, I think we've hit an hour. Unless there are any more final last bell toll questions, I think we're going to leave it there. I think. So I'll pause very shortly for any final questions. There's one about a video interview and how to excel on those. Do you know what? Well, this is it. So my assessment centre was actually in person. So back in 2020, it was in person. So I don't know if anyone has done a video interview since their assessment centre.
No, mine was all in person.
Well, I mean, I haven't done this. I done some. No, I did some in video interviews. The thing I would say is kind of make sure your equipment work or whatever. I've been assessor, so I can kind of give feedback. Try to always communicate. Try to communicate if you have any problem. Try to let people know, because we don't know. Like the thing with video, if you like video interview, or always turn your camera if you're not sure. Then ask. So when we're doing the interview thing, some people turn off their camera where we're trying to kind of judge them, and it's like if they don't put their camera, we don't know what's happening. If they have a technical problem, then let whoever know, so we know immediately there's a problem. Sometimes video interview, I would say, are a bit tricky in terms of when you're all taking the speech. So try to make sure, imagine say you're talking, and because we need you participating, but also make sure other people are also talking. Like if you see someone is not talking, we'll ask, hey, you, what is your opinion? It's pay attention that you're not overtaking the whole space. If you are in group, obviously. I'm thinking, I'm forgetting anything. I'm trying to think with the assessment. What was the thing I seen?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Do you think of it? I think some of us have assessed anything else.
I think that's it. I think be confident. I think it's the same as maybe in person. And as you mentioned, you've got to be active with the actual assessment centre. So Imi, you've got to pop. So I know. I think we're out there now. Answer all the questions, and so I guess all that's left to say is thanks very much, everyone. I know Lindsay's popped off, but thanks for coming and listening, and all the best if you do choose to apply for EDF's graduate scheme.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
That's all. Bye-bye. See ya.